Welcome everyone to yet another video. For those of you that are brought here by the YouTube algorithm, my name is Parker Kurth. I'm a full-time triathlon coach and athlete with NVDMcoaching. And most of the time on this YouTube channel, I post training videos, day in the life videos. I actually have a very fun training video dropping next week. So make sure to listen to the GOAT of triathlon himself. And
hey guys, here we are in Texas. Remember, subscribe, like, and have fun.
Today's video, however, is not going to be me suffering in a pain cave. No, I'm actually going to be reviewing what has quickly become one of my favorite gadgets. The brand new hDrop Gen 2 sweat sensor. Now, I stumbled upon this sweat sensor on Instagram, actually. Speaking of the algorithm, the algorithm brought me an ad about this hDrop sweat sensor, and since I have struggled with cramping and sweating too much in the past in Kona and then most recently at Ironman, Texas, those were kind of the downfalls of my races, I got pretty darn interested. However, when I clicked on the ad and I saw the price tag, which was $250, well, I hesitated a bit. I didn't buy it right away, but then it's like the stars aligned. The next day, I was actually watching a Heather Jackson video. You guys know Heather Jackson. She was a triathlete, and now she's an ultra runner, gravel bike rider. And she was actually wearing one of these. And so I thought, you know, that's the divine forces were showing me a sign. I better pick one up. And so I did. And if after watching this video, you want to pick up a hDrop sensor yourself, you can head on over to their website, which will be in the description box below. And you can enter code PKURTH10 at checkout to save some money. Now you may be thinking to yourself, $250, that's not cheap. And well, it's not. But when compared to some of the other options on the market, it's actually not that bad of a deal. There's the Levelin sweat test, which is a one-time sweat test. I think that's close to $200. Then there's also the NIX biosensors, which is only $130, but you do have to buy refillable, I don't even know what they're called. You have to, I think patches, you have to buy reusable patches pretty often. Whereas this sweat sensor, you buy it once, that's all you need to do. You can use it as many times as you want, wherever you want. All you need is a USB-C charger, which actually comes in the packaging, and that's it. And being able to test in multiple different conditions, multiple different environments, at multiple different intensities is actually pretty darn important. And I didn't realize how important it was until I started using this. So definitely stay tuned for more on that. But back to what you get when you purchase this hDrop sensor. You get a few things. It comes in this nice little box. I'll actually throw up in a little unboxing video to some B-roll. In the box, as you guys can see, it comes with a USB-C charger, as I mentioned, if for some reason you don't have one. And then it does come with 2 alcohol pads. You are probably going to want to pick some up yourself though, however, because it does say that you want to clean it every so often. Speaking of cleaning it, I just hop in the shower after I'm done wearing it with my heart rate strap. I usually wear it, or I only wear it for training, so after I'm done biking or running, I'll just shower with the heart rate strap and the sweat sensor on, and then I hang it up to dry in the shower. And then it also comes with a nice little case, as you guys can see. And then it also comes with 2 armbands and a little clip. Now you can attach this to your heart rate sensor. I did try it once or twice and it does work. It does attach to the heart rate sensor. However, they do mention that for the best accurate results, you want to wear it on your arm like this. And so I would recommend you wear it like an armband. I haven't tried though. I know there are some arm heart rate sensors out there. If you have one of those, you could probably actually attach this to that arm heart rate sensor. And that is one thing I wish hDrop would implement in the future, is heart rate sensing. But I'll talk about that in later parts of this review. Anyway, once you get the hDrop all set up, you have to download the app. It takes you through a little installation process, and then it'll have you do a thumb test, which I believe is, I wasn't too sure. This was also a little finicky. I'll pull up the app right now, but I wish that the hDrop app did a little better job of explaining some of the metrics and whatnot. That being said, I did message the hDrop team a few times during my testing of this sensor, and they responded within an hour. So their customer service, honestly, the best. I couldn't have asked for better support or help while setting this up or using it. You don't have to worry about that at all. But anyway, as I was saying, they have you do a thumb test, which I believe is just like initial hydration test. So if you ever want to check if you're hydrated or not, you just put your thumb, these are actually where the electrodes are that collect your sweat. You place your thumb on here, and then there's a little countdown. It takes about 30 seconds, and then it'll give you some sort of baseline metric. Once you get that baseline metric, I do believe that it is used to calculate your hDrop sweat zones, which I'll throw up a picture up on screen, but you can see your sweat zones after every activity. And also you need to know your baseline if you want to download the Garmin Connect IQ app. I did try downloading the Connect IQ app, but I quickly noticed that you can only be connected to one or the other. And by that I mean you can only see the live stats on your phone or on the app. You can't be connected to both at the same time. And so if the hDrop sensor was connected to your phone, then the stats on the watch would pause until you exit out of the app on the phone. So that would be another thing hDrop could change if you could be connected to both at the same time. And one more thing I want to mention is that the baseline is individualized to everyone, I believe. And so don't be worried if like your baseline is different to someone else's. I'm still not 100% sure what exactly the baseline is because mine's around like 36. So does that mean I'm like 36% hydrated all the time? If anyone from hDrop is watching this, if you guys could maybe let me know, I would greatly appreciate it. Anyway, once you get it all set up, you can start wearing it. And so I have pretty much spent the last 2 weeks wearing this band for pretty much every session I have done. And I've collected a bunch of interesting data. If you guys do want more specifics on sessions, then please let me know in the comments down below. I'll respond, or you can email me, DM me on Instagram. But if I were to do that, this video would be way too long. So I'll just give you a quick rundown. Anyway, all the sessions, I do want to mention all the sessions were done inside. I haven't been biking outside much, and they were all biking. I haven't been running. I'm currently dealing with an injury, so that is too bad because I really would like to take this outside and see how my stats change when I'm not downstairs with a fan on, because I do believe that would change my sodium loss levels and hydration levels by quite a bit. Speaking of which, let's talk about what you get. What does this sensor actually show when you do an activity with it? So when you're recording an activity, there are four primary values that are being calculated. The first is your total sodium loss. The second is your total fluid loss. The third is the temperature sensor. And the fourth is, as I mentioned a few times, the hDrop sweat zones. And that kind of tells you how concentrated or diluted your sweat is, which I know it tells you how hydrated you are. So the more diluted your sweat is, the more hydrated you are, and the more concentrated your sweat is, the less hydrated you are. And this is all updated live, and this is what I meant, that your hDrop can only be connected to your phone or your watch. And so if you're connected to your watch, the data fields will show the exact same data, but just on your watch. And when it's on the phone, well, you guys can see what's on your phone. And then there's also an option to log fluid, and when you log the fluid, it'll ask you what type of fluid you are using, whether that be just water or a sports drink. I personally didn't do that just because every time I drank, that would have just been, a pain to log it every single time. But it's pretty cool. After you finish the activity, there are points on the graph, which I'll show in just a second, that have estimated times of when you took a drink. And I actually found those to be relatively accurate, which I thought was pretty cool. Anyway, once you finish an activity, you press the finish the activity button, and then you get a nice little synopsis of all the data it collected. So as you can see in the activity analytics, there's a few things that it shows. Actually, it shows quite a lot. It'll show you your total fluid loss for the activity, your average sweat rate, your estimated sodium loss, your estimated potassium loss, your sodium concentration, so how concentrated your sweat was, and your first sweat drop. So when was the first time it detected an actual drop of sweat? And now I don't believe you need, well, I know there doesn't need to be a sweat drop for it to collect sweat data. There were multiple times when I got a 0 for the sweat drop minute, but it collected lots of data. And so I believe that the drops just need to be pretty big for it to recognize it as a sweat drop. One change I wish that hDrop would do was, instead of ounces, it would use liters. As you guys can see, it has the milligrams per ounces, ounces per hour. I wish that it was liters per hour, or at least have the option to view it as liters per hour, milligrams per liter, because personally, myself, along with many of my athletes and other athletes I've talked to, we usually use liters and not just ounces, so just having the option to use both would be nice to have. Anyway, after those are the main stats at least, and then there are some graphs, so it'll kind of show you how your sweat rate changed during the activity, and then it'll give you an activity score, which I'm not too sure exactly what the activity score is, maybe just how hydrated you were. Once again, that's where you see your baseline. Oh, and I will mention it does take 3 intense activities for it to get an accurate baseline. But there you guys can see the little dots where is the possible fluid intake. Then there's another graph which shows you the sodium concentration, so how concentrated your sweat was during the activity, and that can change, as you guys can see, during the actual activity. And last but not least, there is a temperature graph. And one pretty cool thing about the temperature graph is I also have a core sensor, and I found the temperature readings between this and the core sensor, at least the skin temperature, pretty similar. So I thought that was interesting as well. Oh, and one more thing, it gives you like a little explanation of the data. And this is, I believe this is AI driven. And so it changes actually what it tells you, the little, summary changes every time based on the activity. One last thing I wanted to mention on the data before we get into the accuracy of it all. I thought this was actually very interesting. So there was one workout I did. It was a sweet spot bike workout. I'll show you guys the actual workout up on screen here. So this is what the workout was. As you can see, the intervals with the power, the heart rate, and then here is the sweat loss data. And what I thought was really cool is you can clearly see in both the sweat rate graph and the sodium concentration graph how the levels, the graphs have a similar shape to the actual workout itself. So as you can see at the harder parts of the workout, during the sweet spot intervals, my heart rate and the power goes up, and so does the sweat rate and the sodium concentration. I don't know, I just thought that was extremely interesting and something I was not necessarily expecting. Maybe at least not to the degree that the hDrop sensor showed. But anyway, you're now all probably thinking to yourself, Parker, that's all great, you have all this data, but just how accurate do you think it is? And long story short, I think it is very accurate. All you data nerds are gonna love this. So pretty much what I did after I collected a bunch of different activities, I went into ChatGPT and I inputted all the data, and I also labeled if it was a hard workout or an easy workout. And then what I also did, since they were all bike rides, I then put in the average power for their workout and the average heart rate for the workout. And I'll show you guys the results. It's actually really interesting. Let me pull up my ChatGPT thread. So then ChatGPT made this little chart for me. I labeled the hard workouts as race and easy workouts as easy. And as you guys can see, I have the sweat rate, the sodium loss, the average power, average heart rate for those two conditions. And I clearly sweat a lot more in race workouts, and my sodium loss is a lot higher as well. Almost 600 milligrams per hour. I lose 600 milligrams of sodium more per hour at a harder workout than I do in an easier workout. And then what I did was I told ChatGPT, okay, now what if I were at race intensity, an actual race intensity? So for me, that would have been about 250 watts and 150 beats per minute. And then it extrapolated that out to 1.23 liters per hour and 2100 milligrams of sodium per hour. And then I took it one step further because, well, obviously I'm not racing in my basement. I'm racing in Texas, you know, where it's hot and humid, or at least that was the most recent race I did. So I told ChatGPT, okay, now put in the environmental factors. And what it came up with, it was pretty interesting. So it came up, where is it? So based on all the data and the conditions at Texas, it said I would have needed to take in around 1.54 liters per hour and 2,700 milligrams of sodium per hour. And now this actually lines up pretty well with some of the other tests I've done. I've taken a Levelin sweat test a few years ago, and then most recently in Kona, I did a precision fuel and hydration test, a sweat test there, and both of those tests had me losing just around 2,000 milligrams of sodium per liter of sweat. And so when looking at, comparing all the data, I'm pretty much between 1,900 to 2,100 milligrams of sodium per liter lost, which is, a lot. But as you guys can see by the data, your sweat rate and your sodium concentration is going to be pretty different based on where you're racing, when you're racing, how hard you're racing, if you're doing a 70.3 versus an Olympic versus Ironman, a full Ironman, if it's hot, if it's in the winter. And so being able to test multiple times in different locations at different intensity truly is pretty darn important, because if I were to use, this fueling plan, so for example, 1.54 liters per hour and 2,700 milligrams of sodium per hour for a race that's not that hot in like November, well then I'm going to be overhydrating way too much and I'm going to be taking in way too much sodium. And so that's why I think this is super cool, because you can, like I said, test it multiple different times and test out different scenarios. The one thing I wish that hDrop could do is pretty much everything I just did in ChatGPT. So now I kind of want to talk about some of the suggestions I have for hDrop going forward. I have a note here with a bunch of ideas I had. So one of the things I would like to see is seeing trends over time. More filters for activities, so being able to filter your activities kind of based on intensity, based on heart rate, whatever it may be. Like I mentioned, being able to track heart rate with this as well, and so you can track intensity, because you already have the sensor. I'm not sure how much harder it would be to add a heart rate sensor, but I think that would be pretty cool. But yeah, being able to see trends over time, so like a graph. I'll show you guys some graphs I made with ChatGPT that show the different sodium levels and hydration levels I need based on different intensities. But if I could get that from the hDrop app, it would just make everything much easier. And then also, like I said, I'd like it to be in liters per hour as well, or the sodium concentration in milligrams per liter instead of ounces. It would be cool for a desktop app as well, so different graphs and whatnot on the actual desktop. I think it would be easier to view some of the data. Heat training as well. For those of you that are longtime viewers, you know that I love to do heat training. That is the one kind of downfall with the hDrop, or not really a downfall, but the limitation of it. You can't really use it while heat training. The reason behind that is when you're wearing multiple layers, it soaks up the sweat, and so you're going to get an inaccurate reading. And that I did try this a few times, but the numbers I were getting seemed a little weird, and so I emailed hDrop and they said, yeah, if you're wearing multiple layers on there or the sweat data is a little skewed, then obviously you're not going to get readings correct readings from the hDrop. Another implementation hDrop can make would be able to start activities from the watch. Currently, you can only start it from the app, so every time you want to start collecting data, you have to open up the app on your phone. That being said, you do not need to have a connection, like I said, on your phone to the hDrop, so you can start it on the app and then go out for a run, leave your phone at home, and then come back and all the data will sync. But yes, to start an activity, it does have to be from the phone itself. And then also logging nutrition. You guys did see there's that space to where you can log your food intake, but I wish there was just some easier way to do it. Honestly, I don't know how. I don't have any suggestions, but yeah, maybe if there's some way every time it could sense maybe you're taking a drink of water, I think that would be pretty cool. And also being able to log the exact fluids or sports nutrition you are using. That way, I think that the post-activity summary or recovery suggestions it gives you could be a bit more accurate. And lastly, and probably the biggest suggestion I have is, like I mentioned, being able to adjust for different environmental factors. So I think it'd be super cool after a hard ride, you can go into the app and change like the temperature, the humidity of it. So let's say I recorded a ride outside 50 degrees in 20% humidity. If after the ride I could go into the app and change the weather, humidity, any other weather conditions, and then it would give me data based on those forecasted conditions. So that way, I wouldn't have to do anything with ChatGPT. It would be all right there. I think that would be incredibly helpful and super useful. That way I could just prep for, future races just a little bit better. But anyway, I think that's going to do it for my little hDrop review spiel. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me. Or like I mentioned, the hDrop team is super responsive, very helpful. They answered all my questions right away. And if you do end up picking one up, let me know in the comments down below your results. It's pretty cool. I have a few athletes that have used this. I know many of you guys follow Luke Hopkins. He also picked one up. And the data he's been getting has been pretty crazy. He's pretty much as salty as I am. And he's in Texas, so seeing the data he's getting, man, he sweats buckets. That's crazy. And so that's another validation, I guess. His data is different from my data. And then I also have another athlete who lives in Chicago, and his sodium loss is like 400 milligrams per ounce, or like 400 milligrams per liter if I were to convert it. So it's a lot less than me. So we're getting different data, which is always nice to see. But anyway, yeah, that's going to do it. Like I said, let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you pick one up, what you guys want me to do or see next. Are there any other things you want me to test out with this? I definitely can go ahead and do that. And that's going to do it. We'll catch you guys in the next one.